Hi everyone, it's Katie from Artopotamus. I am here this week to show you how you can use a Dutch door to make your weekly layouts more efficient. I've got 3 different layouts to show you, and then I'm going to show you really quick how you can make your own. It's super easy and I use this all the time. So the first one I have is just an example from my bullet journal this year, and this was during April, but I really like how this layout turned out. And of course, I get a little bit fancy and artsy with some of these, and if that's not your style, that's totally okay. You can draw this with a ballpoint pen and make it black and white and you're good to go. But I get a little bored if I don't have some color going on. Right here where I put my date for this week, I actually did this because I messed up the lettering, and I took a sticky note and just stuck it on top and ripped it to kind of match, and then I was like, well, I guess the rest of the page is gonna be purple. So I took some scrap paper that I had lying around. This is just tissue paper and a little bit of collage paper that I had. I glue sticked it in. You probably can't tell anymore, but there are certain spots where I messed up something and I covered it up with some scrap paper that I actually got from making these Dutch door formats. So you're gonna see how this will benefit you in multiple ways. So over here I have my weekly planning. Over here are my lesson goals, and this for me is what kind of takes up the most space, but this is what makes it really essential for me. So if you're not a teacher, you could use this in a different way, or you could just spread these out so you have a little more time for your weekly planning. You could do a quote over here that you want to be able to see all week. You could do some journaling. There have been times when I've saved this space for journaling and just used it that way. But I really like having these dailies that I can flip through. So down here I have cut the paper so that I can turn the page from Monday to Tuesday and Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday is just the bottom of this same page here. And this way I can see these lesson goals all week for me, and I don't have to flip back and forth to see them. And this of course is condensed. These are just the very bare minimum bullet points of what I know I'm doing with my students. And then I have my little tracker over here to show how many kids were there that day and if we got it done. So for instance, these circles that are filled all the way in, that means that the class, everyone was there and everyone did what they were supposed to do. If there's a little white spot in the circle, that means there were probably a couple of kids absent, and I just need to be aware of that for next week. If I put an X, that means that that class did not meet that day for whatever reason. And so the next week when I'm starting my planning, I can see this class is behind and I need to make a note of that in my goals. So let's move on to the next one. So here is just another example of using this Dutch door format. And you can see that when I made my weekly plan over here, there were some days that I didn't write anything. So in the future, I might condense this even more on this side. But I really like using this Dutch door. I have my lesson goals over here, and you can actually see that some of my classes were rehearsing all week because they had a program that they were working on. So I wrote that in, and that meant that I didn't really have to put any other goals that week. But once again, right here where I wrote the word rehearse, I didn't space it out well enough and I kind of messed it up. And you probably wouldn't notice unless I pointed it out to you. But if you look at this little straight corner, you can see that I've actually patched over where I messed up with another piece of the Leuchtturm paper. And it's like I didn't even make a mistake at all. This way, you give yourself a little bit more leeway if you mess things up. And it gives me some more freedom and makes me a little bit more brave when I want to try something new. So once again, I have just used a little bit of, this is watercolor and water-soluble marker to create this sort of purple background. I used some brush pens for the lettering. I used a Sakura white gel pen to go on top of the black, and it made this sort of a raised dot texture. And you can see that down here too. I was counting down the number of days left in the school year, so you'll see it start to go backwards. All right, so here's Tuesday and Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday. And here I just sort of filled in this space with a little keep going and some washi tape. Just try to make it cute. It really helps me if my layouts are cute. I don't think you understand. Because a person like me who has some ADD going on, I really cannot focus on something unless I I can customize it and make it really visually attractive. And also the act of creating this is very therapeutic for me. And I'll talk about that in another video, but that's why my layouts are so detailed and artistic looking. And then here, this is the latest one that I've done. This colored paper here is actually blotting paper that I had when I was painting something. This was underneath it and it got kind of messy, but I really liked how some of the inks blended together, so I just tore it and I stuck it here in my notebook. And part of that is because some of the lettering on the previous page bled through. And so in order to cover that up, I just stuck this thicker paper here. And you'll never know that I messed that up. So once again, I've got my weekly layout over here, my lesson goals, and then my dailies. And this just has a little bit different color theme, but you might not notice, but I do have actually some clear tape here because I'm going to show you how you can really make use of these pages. You're not going to end up wasting any of the paper that you cut with this. So I've actually taped in these little pages for this week. So here's Tuesday and Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. And just with a little bit of washi tape and some colored ink, I made it look pretty cute, I think. So next I'm going to show you how you can do this yourself without wasting too much paper. So first you are going to need an empty spread with 2 pages here, and then you're going to need 1, 2, and then another page here. Because for me, I don't do a Dutch door for Saturday and Sunday. I just find that I don't have that many things to write down. But if you wanted to, you could add an extra page and then you would have a 7-day Dutch door. But this is just how I do it. So what I usually do is I count from the bottom up how many dots I'm going to need to make my grid have quite enough space. So let's do that now. And once I've got 14 dots, that just feels like that's enough space for me. You could do more or less if you wanted, but you probably don't want to make this too thin because it might tear. So once I've done that, I've just made a little mark, and then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut the 2 pages that are in the middle. I don't want to cut this last page because, as I showed you before, this is just going to be my lesson goals area, and then this is going to be Friday. So I don't want to cut another Dutch door if I don't need to. So I am just going to snip right here along this line of the dot grid. And I'm cutting through 2 pages at once. Okay, so I've cut all the way here into the spine, and this is where you have to be a little bit careful because depending on how your notebook is made, you probably don't want to just rip these pages here. That might mess up your binding somewhere else in the notebook. So what I'm going to do instead is just cut as closely as I can into the spine, and then I can actually tape that down with some clear tape or cover it with some washi tape if that bothers me. But usually I just leave it. And again, through 2 pages at once. Okay, so now you'll see that I have my Dutch door is ready to go. So this would be Monday right here, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday on this side. So instead of throwing these away or just sticking them in a file somewhere, I am going to use these 2 pages that I cut for the next week's Dutch door. And I'm going to show you how to do that and just tape it right in the spine. So for this, I want to count from the bottom of these pages about 14 squares up because that's the same amount that I did on my other one, and I just want them to be the same. But you could make it bigger if you wanted, whatever. Okay, so here's my 2 pieces that I'm going to make into my Dutch door for this week. And I still have, because of the size of this notebook, I still have these rectangular sheets that I'm going to hang on to because I might use them for another Dutch door later, or I might use them to patch and cover up something where I've messed up in my notebook. So I am just going to take this washi tape and use it to stick my pages here into the spine. Okay, so first I lined up the edge of my paper and the little curve of the corner down here with the pages that are there. And then I added the washi tape so that it kind of taped it to that page. So that way when I fold it, it'll be a little different on this side, but it'll lay flat when I have the whole week open. So now I'm gonna add the second one. This time when I added my tape, I taped the second page to the first page so that when I turn it, this edge of the page still lines up with this spine right here. And I'm just gonna trim my washi tape really quick. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. I might decide that I need to reinforce this a little bit, and so I might come back here and put a second piece of tape. And this time I'm taping the new page to this week. But you wanna make sure that your notebook is really nice and flat, and that when you press this tape into your spine, you get it really nice and flush so that you don't have any problems turning these pages from one to the other. And from here, you can just go ahead and decorate this however you want. All right, guys, that's it for today. Happy bullet journaling. I'll see you next time.